The gleaming chrome bumpers and polished hoods of luxury cars stretched endlessly across the showroom floor. But all I could focus on was my sister Amanda's voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Listen here, nobody. This is Premium Motors, not some charity case walk-in clinic. You clearly don't belong here." 5 minutes later, her face went white as she stammered those two words that would change everything. "Boss? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." The Colorado morning sun cast long shadows across the Premium Motors lot as I pulled my beat-up Honda Civic into the visitor parking space. 3 months had passed since I'd last seen Amanda, and the weight of what I was about to do pressed against my chest like a stone. The dealership looked exactly as I remembered it from the architectural plans I'd reviewed countless times in boardroom meetings. Sleek glass facade, the distinctive red and silver logo gleaming against black granite, luxury vehicles positioned like chess pieces across the pristine showroom floor. I sat in my car for a moment, adjusting the collar of my deliberately modest navy blazer. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was driving a 12-year-old Honda to visit the dealership I now owned. My assistant Jennifer had offered to arrange a town car, but I'd declined. Today wasn't about making an impression. It was about seeing the truth. The brass handles of the entrance doors felt cool against my palm as I stepped into the air-conditioned showroom. The scent of leather and new car smell enveloped me immediately. To my left, a cherry-red Maserati Quattroporte sat under carefully positioned spotlights, its price tag discreetly tucked beneath the windshield wiper. To my right, a midnight blue Porsche 911 Turbo gleamed like a jewel. "Welcome to Premium Motors," a young salesman in a crisp white shirt approached with a practiced smile. His name tag read, Trevor. "Can I help you find something today?" Before I could respond, Amanda's voice rang out across the showroom. "Trevor, get back to the Hendersons. They're actually buying something." Her heels clicked authoritatively across the marble floor as she approached us, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, her charcoal suit impeccable. She looked every inch the successful sales manager she'd worked so hard to become. I handle this," she said to Trevor, who quickly retreated. Amanda's green eyes, the same eyes we'd inherited from our mother, swept over me with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" The question hung in the air between us. 3 years of silence. 3 years since our father's funeral when she'd accused me of abandoning the family, and this was how she greeted me. Not with recognition, not with surprise, but with the polished indifference of a saleswoman addressing a customer she'd already decided couldn't afford anything. "I'm looking for a car," I said simply. Amanda's gaze traveled from my scuffed flats to my off-the-rack blazer, to my simple ponytail. I watched her make calculations in her head, the kind of rapid assessment every car salesperson learned to make within seconds of meeting someone. Her expression shifted from professional courtesy to barely disguised irritation. "What's your budget range?" she asked, her tone already suggesting she expected disappointment. "I'm flexible," I replied. "Flexible how? Are we talking certified pre-owned, or are you looking at our economy selection in the back lot?" I glanced around the showroom, taking in the marble floors, the carefully curated displays, the small army of salespeople in expensive suits. "Actually, I was hoping to see something from your premium inventory." Amanda's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Listen here, nobody. This is Premium Motors, not some charity case walk-in clinic. You clearly don't belong here." She gestured dismissively toward the street. "There's a Honda dealership about 6 blocks down and a used car lot on Morrison Street that might be more your speed." The words hit exactly as she'd intended them to. Nobody. The same word she'd used during our last conversation, when she'd told me I was nobody to her anymore, that I'd chosen my career over family and could live with the consequences. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said quietly. The only misunderstanding here is you thinking you can walk into a luxury dealership looking like you shop at discount stores and expect to be taken seriously. Amanda's voice carried across the showroom, drawing glances from other customers and staff. I've been working in this business for 8 years. I can spot a time waster from across the parking lot. Trevor had paused in his conversation with the Hendersons, clearly uncomfortable with the volume of Amanda's voice. An older gentleman examining a silver Jaguar turned to stare. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but not from embarrassment, from the familiar anger that Amanda had always been able to provoke. 8 years, I repeated. That's a long time to build a career. Long enough to know that someone driving a Honda Civic with a dented rear bumper isn't shopping for a Maserati, Amanda snapped. Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't have time for this. I have real customers to serve. She turned away, dismissing me entirely. It was such a perfect Amanda move. The dramatic exit, the assumption that the conversation was over because she'd declared it over. Some things never changed. But as she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. On her left wrist was the watch our father had given her for her college graduation, a modest Timex with a leather band that she'd treasured more than any piece of jewelry she'd ever owned. She still wore it, even here in this temple of luxury, where image was everything. I watched her approach the Hendersons, her smile transforming instantly back to professional warmth. "So sorry for the interruption," I heard her say. "Now, you mentioned you were interested in the extended warranty package?" Standing alone in the center of the showroom, surrounded by cars worth more than most people's houses, I felt the familiar weight of the decision I'd been wrestling with for months. The quarterly reports had been clear. Premium Motors was hemorrhaging money, plagued by management issues and a toxic workplace culture that was driving away both customers and talented salespeople. The board had recommended closing the location entirely, but seeing Amanda here, seeing how she'd built her life around this place, made everything more complicated. She didn't know that the private equity firm that had acquired Premium Motors 6 months ago was run by the sister she'd written off as nobody. She didn't know that I'd been flying to Colorado monthly, reviewing financial reports, attending strategy meetings, trying to find a way to save a business that was failing from the inside out. The brass nameplate on the manager's office door read, "Amanda Chen, Sales Manager." She'd kept our father's name, even after everything, even after telling me I was dead to her. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Jennifer's number. One call, and this would all be over. Amanda would learn the truth in the most professional way possible, through HR, through official channels, through the same corporate machinery that had been slowly strangling this dealership for months. But as I watched her laugh at something, Mr. Henderson said, as I saw her genuine enthusiasm when she talked about the Jaguar's features, I realized that maybe there was another way. Maybe the truth didn't have to come through a phone call or a formal announcement. Maybe it could come through the simple act of walking over to her office and knocking on the door. I slipped my phone back into my purse and started walking toward the back of the showroom, past the gleaming rows of cars, past the sales desks where other deals were being made, toward the office where my sister was about to learn that nobody had become somebody after all. Amanda's office door was slightly ajar, and through the gap I could see her on the phone, gesturing animatedly as she spoke to what sounded like a financing company. Her desk was organized chaos. Sales reports scattered across one corner, a half-empty coffee mug sporting the dealership logo, and 3 framed photos positioned where she could see them while working. I recognized one immediately. Our family. At Christmas 5 years ago, the last holiday we'd all spent together before everything fell apart. I knocked twice on the doorframe. Amanda looked up, and her expression immediately soured when she saw me standing there. "Hold on, Marcus," she said into the phone. "I'll call you back in 5 minutes." She hung up and leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You're still here. I thought I made myself clear about our selection on Morrison Street. Can we talk privately?" I asked, stepping into the office and closing the door behind me. Amanda's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me? You can't just walk into my office and close the door. I don't know who you think you are, but—" "My name is Sophia Chen," I said quietly. "And I think you know exactly who I am." The color drained from Amanda's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. The confident sales manager who had dismissed me minutes earlier vanished, replaced by someone who looked genuinely shaken. "Sophia?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "But why are you here?" I sat down in the chair across from her desk without being invited. "Business." "Business?" Amanda's voice cracked on the word. "What kind of business could you possibly have here? You work in tech. You live in California. You run some startup. Company that—" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as pieces of a puzzle began falling into place. "Not a startup," I said. "Haven't been for 3 years now." Amanda reached for her coffee mug with shaking hands, then seemed to remember it was empty and set it back down. "Then what? What do you do now?" "I run a private equity firm called Summit Ventures. We specialize in acquiring underperforming retail and service businesses, restructuring them, and either turning them profitable or liquidating their assets." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Amanda's face cycle through confusion, realization, and finally a dawning horror that made my stomach clench. "Summit Ventures," she repeated slowly. "Summit? Oh God. Oh God, no." Her hands flew to her mouth. "You're the new owners. You're the people who bought Premium Motors." I nodded. "How long?" Amanda's voice was hollow. "How long have you owned this place?" 6 months. The acquisition went through in December. Amanda buried her face in her hands. When she looked up again, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. 6 months. You've owned my job, my livelihood, my entire career for 6 months, and you never said a word. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. You made it clear 3 years ago that you didn't want to hear from me. That was different. Amanda shot to her feet, pacing behind her desk like a caged animal. That was about Dad's funeral, about you missing family dinners and holidays because you were too busy building your precious career. This is my life, Sophia. This job is everything to me. I watched her pace, remembering how she'd done the same thing as a teenager when she was upset about something. "I know what this job means to you." "Do you?" Amanda spun to face me. "Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been playing some sick game. Letting me work here, letting me think I was building something when all along you were planning to— What? Fire me? Close the dealership? Turn it into another one of your profitable acquisitions?" "The dealership is losing money," I said matter-of-factly. "It has been 2 years. The previous owners were running it into the ground with poor management decisions and a toxic workplace culture. If Summit Ventures hadn't acquired it, Premium Motors would have closed permanently by spring." Amanda stopped pacing. "Losing money? That's impossible. We hit our quarterly targets last month. I personally moved 15 units, and my team, individual. Sales numbers don't tell the whole story. The overhead costs are astronomical. Employee turnover is at 60% annually, and customer satisfaction scores are the lowest in the regional market. You're selling cars, but the business model is fundamentally broken." "So fix it," Amanda said desperately. "You're the big-shot private equity executive. Fix whatever's broken and keep us open." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Amanda's voice rose again. "You said you specialize in turning businesses around. So turn us around. We're good at what we do. I'm good at what I do. I've been Salesperson of the Month 8 times this year alone." I pulled out my phone and opened the email app, scrolling. To the report I'd received from our operations consultant just last week. Your manager, Dennis Rodriguez, has been skimming from the service department. Your head of finance, Patricia Williams, has been manipulating lease terms to inflate her commission numbers. 3 of your salespeople are under investigation for odometer fraud. The service department has outstanding complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and 2 former employees have filed wrongful termination lawsuits that are costing the company more in legal fees than the entire sales department brings in monthly profit. Amanda sank back into her chair as if I'd physically pushed her. That can't all be true. It is. And that's just what we discovered in the first month of due diligence. Dennis has been here for 12 years. Patricia trained me when I started. These people are my colleagues, my friends. These people are criminals, I said bluntly, and their actions have put your job and the jobs of every honest employee at this dealership at risk. Amanda stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing everything I'd told her. How much do you know? About the day-to-day operations, I mean. Everything. I've been reviewing monthly reports, attending board meetings, and analyzing every aspect of this business for months. I know that you consistently outperform your sales targets. I know that your customer satisfaction scores are the highest on the team. I know that you've been covering for Dennis when he disappears for 3-hour lunches, and that you've been doing Patricia's job when she calls in sick every other Friday. You've been watching me, Amanda said quietly. I've been trying to save this place, and I've been trying to figure out if there's anyone here worth saving it for. The weight of that statement settled between us. Amanda's earlier anger seemed to deflate, replaced by something that looked like exhaustion. So what happens now? She asked. Do you fire me? Do you shut us down? Do you sell the building and turn it into a shopping mall? I leaned forward in my chair. That depends. On what? On whether you want to help me fix this place, or whether you want to keep pretending that everything is fine. Amanda was quiet. For so long, I wondered if she was going to answer at all. Finally, she spoke. If I help you, if I work with you to turn this around, what happens to Dennis? To Patricia? To the other people you mentioned? They'll be terminated and likely prosecuted. There's no other option. And the honest employees? They keep their jobs. With better management, better systems, and a workplace culture that actually values integrity. Amanda picked up the photo from her desk, the one of our family at Christmas. She stared at it for a moment, then looked back at me. Why didn't you just call? Why didn't you tell me who you were when you walked in here today? Because I needed to see what this place really was. I needed to see how you'd treat someone you thought was beneath you. The words hit their target. Amanda flinched as if I'd slapped her. I called you nobody, she whispered. Yes, you did. Just like I called you nobody 3 years ago. Yes. Amanda set the photo down carefully, her hands trembling slightly. I'm sorry. God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. For today, for 3 years ago, for all of it. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Dennis Rodriguez's voice boomed through the wood. Amanda, we need to talk about the Morrison account. There's been a problem with the financing paperwork. Amanda and I locked eyes. At that moment, I saw my sister make a choice that would determine not just her future, but the future of everyone who worked at Premium Motors. Come in, Dennis, she called out, her voice steady despite everything we'd just discussed. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Dennis Rodriguez burst through the door like he owned the place, his expensive Italian suit straining against his substantial frame. His cologne hit me before he did, an overpowering cloud of something that probably cost more than most people's car payments. He didn't bother knocking, didn't wait for permission, just barged in with the confidence of someone who'd been getting away with things for far too long. Amanda, we've got a serious situation with... He stopped mid-sentence when he noticed me sitting across from Amanda's desk, His small, dark eyes narrowed as they swept over my modest outfit. "Oh, didn't realize you were still dealing with walk-ins." "Dennis?" Amanda's voice was carefully controlled. "This is Sophia Chen. Sophia, meet Dennis Rodriguez, our general manager." Dennis barely glanced in my direction, already turning back to Amanda. "Right. Well, whoever she is can wait. The Morrison." Financing fell through because Patricia screwed up the credit application. Again. The customer is threatening to walk, and that's a $40,000 sale down the drain. I need you to call them and smooth things over with that magic touch of yours. I watched Amanda's face carefully. This was the moment of truth. Would she continue to enable the behavior I'd been reading about in reports? Or would she start making the hard choices that could save this place? "Actually, Dennis," Amanda said slowly, "I think we need to discuss Patricia's performance issues. This isn't the first time her paperwork has been problematic." Dennis waved dismissively. "Patricia's fine. She's been here longer than both of us combined. She just needs to be more careful, that's all. Now, about Morrison. How long has she been making these kinds of mistakes?" I asked quietly. Dennis finally looked at me directly, his expression shifting from dismissive to annoyed. "I'm sorry. Who are you exactly? Because this is a private business conversation between management." "Answer her question," Amanda said firmly. Something in Amanda's tone must have surprised Dennis because his eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me?" I answered her question. "How long has Patricia been making financing errors?" Dennis looked back and forth, between us, clearly sensing a shift in dynamics he didn't understand. "Look, Amanda, I don't know what's gotten into you, but we don't air our internal issues in front of customers. Maybe your friend here should—" "She's not a customer," Amanda interrupted. "She's the owner." The silence that followed was spectacular. Dennis's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like panic as the implications began to sink in. "Owner?" he repeated slowly. "What do you mean, owner?" "I mean she owns Premium Motors," Amanda said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "She represents Summit Ventures, the private equity firm that acquired us 6 months ago." Dennis's face went pale beneath his fake tan. That's impossible. Summit Ventures is run by some tech executives from California. Some woman named Sophia Chen, I said, standing up and extending my hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Dennis." Dennis stared at my outstretched hand like it might bite him. When he finally shook it, his palm was sweaty despite the air conditioning. This is quite a surprise," he stammered. "I had no idea you were planning a visit. If I'd known, we could have prepared a proper presentation, shown you our quarterly numbers, given you the full tour." "I've seen the quarterly numbers," I said calmly. "All of them, including the ones that don't quite add up." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dennis's smile became strained, and I could see him calculating rapidly behind his eyes. "I'm not sure what you mean by that," he said carefully. I opened my purse and pulled out a manila folder. "Service department revenues for the past 18 months. Would you like to review them with me?" Dennis's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "I'm sure any discrepancies are just clerical errors. You know how it is with paperwork. Clerical errors don't usually involve systematic skimming of parts markup," I said, opening the folder and pulling out a spreadsheet. $43,000 over 18 months, to be precise. Amanda's sharp intake of breath was audible. Dennis looked like he might be sick. "Now wait just a minute," Dennis said, his voice rising. "I don't know what kind of investigation you think you've been conducting, but I've been nothing but loyal to this company for 12 years. 12 years of building relationships, growing the business, training staff. Training staff to falsify service records?" I asked. "Because that's what the state inspector found when they did their surprise audit last month." Dennis's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. That was Tony in the service bay made those decisions on his own. I had no knowledge. Tony, who reports directly to you. Tony, who's been clocking overtime hours he never worked. Tony, whose cousin happens to be your nephew-in-law, according to the employment records. The color had completely drained from Dennis's face now. He looked around the room desperately, as if searching for an escape route. Look, he said, his voice taking on a pleading tone. If there have been some irregularities, I'm sure we can. Work something out. I'm willing to take a pay cut if necessary. Implement new oversight procedures. What about Patricia? I asked. What about her? Is she also willing to take a pay cut to compensate for the fraudulent lease terms she's been writing? Dennis's eyes went wide. You can't prove that. Actually, I can. The State Banking Commission has copies of 17 lease agreements with manipulated interest rates. Your finance manager has been pocketing the difference for 8 months. Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. 8 months? Dennis, you knew about this for 8 months and didn't say anything? Amanda, you have to understand. I don't understand anything. Amanda's voice was shaking with anger. I've been working myself to death trying to keep our numbers up, trying to maintain our reputation, and meanwhile you and Patricia have been stealing from our customers? It's not stealing, it's just creative financing. It's fraud, I said flatly. And it's going to result in criminal charges. Dennis turned to Amanda with desperate eyes. Amanda, you know me. We've worked together for years. I made some mistakes, but I was trying to protect the dealership's bottom line. You understand that, right? You know I'd never do anything to hurt this place intentionally. Amanda looked at Dennis for a long moment, and I could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. This was someone she'd worked with. Probably. Considered a friend. Someone she'd trusted and respected. How many other people knew? She asked quietly. Knew what? Don't play dumb, Dennis. How many other employees were involved in this? Dennis shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't like that. It wasn't some big conspiracy. Just answer the question. Patricia? Obviously. Tony in service. Maybe Jake from parts and accessories, but he was just following orders. Jake too? Amanda's voice cracked. Jake with the new baby? Jake who's been working double shifts to pay for his wife's medical bills? Jake didn't know the bigger picture, Dennis said quickly. He was just processing paperwork. Fraudulent paperwork. That could land him in prison, I pointed out. The fight seemed to go out of Dennis all at once. His shoulders sagged, and he sank into the chair I'd been occupying earlier. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now you pack up your office, I said. Security will escort you out within the hour. You'll be receiving termination paperwork from our legal department, along with notification that this matter has been referred to the district attorney's office. And Patricia? Same thing. And Tony? And Jake? I looked at Amanda. This was her call to make, and we both knew it. Jake made mistakes, Amanda said slowly, but he was following direct orders from his supervisor. If he cooperates fully with the investigation and makes restitution for any financial damages, I think we can work something out. And Tony? Amanda's jaw tightened. Tony knew exactly what he was doing. He's gone. Dennis nodded slowly, all the bluster gone out of him. I suppose you'll be taking over as general manager, he said to Amanda. Actually, I said, that's something Amanda and I still need to discuss. Dennis stood up, straightening his expensive suit one last time. For what it's worth, he said, Amanda's the best employee you've got. Don't let your family drama get in the way of good business. With that, he walked out of the office, leaving Amanda and me alone with the wreckage of everything she'd thought she knew about her workplace. Amanda slumped back in her chair, looking shell-shocked. 12 years, she whispered. He's been here 12 years and I never suspected a thing. That's not your fault, I said. Professional criminals are good at hiding what they do. But I should have seen the signs. I should have asked more questions, paid more attention. You were doing your job, not auditing the books. That's what management is supposed to handle. Amanda looked up at me with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. So what happens now? Do you close us down? Liquidate everything and walk away? I sat back down across from her. That depends on whether you think this place is worth saving. It is, Amanda said without hesitation. Despite everything that just happened, despite all the corruption and the lies, there are good people here who care about doing right by our customers. Trevor's honest. Sarah in parts is solid. Most of the sales team is clean. And you think you can manage them? All of them? Amanda was quiet for a moment, considering. I think I can try. I think I owe it to the good people here to try. I nodded. Then we have a lot of work to do. The dealership felt different after Dennis left. Word spread quickly through the building, the kind of whispered conversations that happen when people's livelihoods hang in the balance. I watched from Amanda's office window as Patricia Williams stormed across the parking lot, her box of personal belongings clutched against her chest, her face red with indignation. She'd taken the news of her termination about as well as expected, threatening lawsuits and screaming about wrongful termination until security escorted her out. Amanda sat behind her desk, scrolling through employee files on her computer. She'd been quiet for the past hour, methodically reviewing personnel records, sales data, and performance evaluations. The weight of suddenly being responsible for 23 people's jobs was written clearly across her face. Jake's in the break room, she said without looking up. He's been there for 30 minutes just staring at his phone. I think he's trying to figure out how to tell his wife he might lose his job. Have you talked to him yet? I wanted to review his file first. Make sure I understand exactly what he was involved in before I make any promises. Amanda pulled up another screen, squinting at the numbers. According to this, Jake processed 47 parts orders that were flagged as irregular, but they were all approved by Tony, and Tony was following Dennis's direct orders. What's your gut telling you? Amanda leaned back in her chair. My gut says Jake's a good kid who got caught up in something he didn't understand. He's been here 2 years, never missed a day of work. Customers love him. When his wife was in the hospital for complications with the pregnancy, he worked overtime every week to cover the medical bills. Sounds like someone worth keeping. But I can't just go on gut feelings anymore, can I? I have to look at the legal exposure, the financial impact, the message it sends to other employees. Amanda rubbed her temples. God, is this what management feels like? This constant weight of other people's lives in your hands? Before I could answer, there was a soft knock on the door. Trevor poked his head in, looking nervous. Amanda? Sorry to interrupt, but the Henderson couple is back. They're asking about their trade-in paperwork, and they seem pretty upset about something. Also, there are 2 reporters in the parking lot asking questions about some kind of investigation. Amanda and I exchanged glances. News of the terminations had apparently leaked faster than we'd anticipated. Tell the Hendersons I'll be right out, Amanda said, and ask security to handle the reporters. No statements until we have a communication strategy in place. Trevor nodded and disappeared. Amanda stood up, smoothing her skirt. Into the fire, she muttered. I followed her out into the showroom, where Mr. and Mrs. Henderson stood beside the silver Jaguar they'd been considering earlier. Mrs. Henderson held a crumpled piece of paper in her hand, and both of them looked agitated. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, Amanda approached with her professional smile firmly in place. I understand there's been some confusion about your paperwork. Confusion? Mr. Henderson's voice was loud enough to draw attention from across the showroom. Your finance manager tried to slip an extra $3,000 into our loan without telling us. We only caught it because my wife's brother works at a bank and reviewed the terms. Amanda's smile flickered but held. I'm so sorry to hear about this issue. Patricia is no longer with the company, and we're conducting a full review of all recent transactions to ensure accuracy. No longer with the company? Mrs. Henderson looked suspicious. What does that mean exactly? It means she was terminated this afternoon for financial irregularities, Amanda said honestly. We discovered that she had been manipulating financing terms without customer knowledge or consent. The Hendersons stared at her in shock. Around the showroom, other conversations had stopped as people turned to listen. "Are you telling us this woman was stealing from customers?" Mr. Henderson asked. "I'm telling you that we discovered serious problems with her work, and we've taken immediate action to correct them. Your financing will be completely restructured with accurate terms, and there will be no additional cost to you." "What about other customers?" Mrs. Henderson pressed. "How many people got ripped off?" Amanda took a deep breath. "We're contacting everyone who may have been affected. Anyone who was overcharged will receive full restitution, and we're implementing new oversight procedures to ensure this never happens again." I watched Amanda handle the crisis with growing respect. She wasn't trying to minimize the problem or deflect blame. She was owning it, taking responsibility, and offering concrete solutions. This was leadership under pressure, and she was rising to meet it. Trevor approached with another couple in tow, a young man and woman who looked like first-time car buyers. "Amanda, Mr. and Mrs. Garcia have some questions about their financing options." "Of course," Amanda said. "Why don't we sit down and go over everything in detail? I want to make sure you understand every aspect of your loan terms before you sign anything." As Amanda worked with the Garcias, I noticed other employees watching her carefully. The word about the terminations had spread, and everyone was trying to figure out what the new power structure looked like. Some looked nervous, others relieved. A few seemed to be taking notes on Amanda's approach. Sarah from the parts department approached me while Amanda explained interest rates to the young couple. "Are you really the new owner?" she asked quietly. "I represent the ownership group, yes." "Is it true that Dennis and Patricia were stealing?" I nodded. "It's true." Sarah's shoulders sagged with relief. "I'm glad someone finally caught them. I've been here 5 years, and I always wondered how Dennis could afford that new Escalade on his salary. And Patricia? She made my life miserable whenever I questioned her parts orders." "What do you mean?" "She'd order expensive parts that we never seemed to use, then get angry when I asked about inventory discrepancies. Last month, she screamed at me in front of customers because I wouldn't sign off on a parts requisition that didn't make sense. I almost quit. I made a mental note to have our accounting firm do a full inventory audit. What do you think of Amanda taking over management?" Sarah's face lit up. "Amanda's amazing. She actually listens when you talk to her, and she knows the business better than anyone. If you keep her as manager, I think a lot of people will be relieved." Across the showroom, Amanda was shaking hands with the Garcias, who were smiling broadly. Whatever she'd told them about their financing had apparently satisfied their concerns. "Sarah," Amanda called out, walking over to us. "Could you pull the parts inventory for the last 6 months? I want to review our ordering patterns." "Already on it," Sarah replied. "I've been keeping my own records because things never seemed to add up." "Smart thinking. Can you have it ready by tomorrow morning?" "Sure thing, boss." The word boss hung in the air for a moment. Amanda's eyes widened slightly, as if the reality of her new position was just sinking in. "I should check on Jake," she said quietly to me. We found Jake in the break room, slumped at a small table with his head in his hands. He looked up when we entered, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "Jake," Amanda said gently, taking the seat across from him. "We need to talk." "I know," Jake said miserably. "I know I'm fired. I don't know how to tell Rebecca. The baby's only 3 months old, and with her medical bills—" "You're not fired," Amanda said firmly. Jake's head snapped up. "What?" "You made mistakes, but you were following direct orders from your supervisor. That doesn't excuse the mistakes, but it does provide context." Amanda leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to work with our legal team to document everything Tony asked you to do. You're going to help us identify every irregular transaction you were involved in. And you're going to take a financial management course so you understand The legal implications of the paperwork you process? That's it? Jake's voice was shaky with relief. That's it. But Jake, if you ever suspect something isn't right, you come to me directly. No more following orders that don't make sense just because someone with a title tells you to. Understood? Jake nodded vigorously. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. I promise I'll do better. After Jake left, Amanda and I walked back toward her office. The showroom was quieter now, with most of the day shift employees heading home. The late afternoon sun slanted through the large windows, casting long shadows across the polished cars. How do you feel? I asked. Amanda was quiet for a moment. Terrified, she admitted. But also energized? Like for the first time in years, I'm actually in control of something that matters. You handled the Hendersons well, and the decision about Jake was the right one. Was it? I keep second-guessing myself. What if I'm being too lenient? What if other employees think they can get away with things because I'm not tough enough? Leadership isn't about being tough, I said. It's about being fair. Jake made mistakes, but he's owning up to them and he's willing to do the work to make things right. That's worth something. We reached her office, and Amanda paused with her hand on the doorknob. Sophia, can I ask you something? Of course. When you decided to buy this place, was it because of me? Because you knew I worked here? I considered the question carefully. Partly, I admitted. Summit Ventures looks at dozens of potential acquisitions every month. But when Premium Motors came across my desk, when I saw your name on the employee roster, I wanted to understand what your life had become. I wanted to see if there was something here worth saving. And is there? I looked out at the showroom floor, at the remaining employees cleaning up their workstations and preparing for tomorrow, at the cars gleaming under the showroom lights, at the potential for something better than what had been here before. Ask me again in 6 months, I said. But I think the answer is going to be yes. Amanda smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her all day. 6 months. I can work with that timeline. Good, I said, because tomorrow we will start rebuilding this place the right way. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot where Amanda had first dismissed me as nobody, but the Premium Motors showroom looked like a completely different place. Gone were the intimidating displays that seemed designed to make customers feel unwelcome. In their place were comfortable seating areas, clear pricing information, and friendly staff members who actually seemed happy to be at work. The transformation hadn't been easy. Those first few weeks after the terminations had tested everyone's resolve. The local news had picked up the story of corruption at Premium Motors, and for a while it seemed like every potential customer had heard about the scandal. Sales dropped to nearly zero for 3 weeks straight, and I'd seriously considered whether it might be better to close the dealership entirely rather than try to rebuild its reputation. But Amanda had refused to give up. She'd worked 18-hour days, personally calling every customer who might have been affected by Patricia's fraudulent financing, arranging restitution payments, and implementing new transparency policies that went far beyond what was legally required. She'd retrained the entire sales staff on ethical practices, brought in an outside consultant to overhaul their customer service protocols, and somehow managed to turn what could have been a public relations disaster into a story about accountability and redemption. Sophia. Trevor's voice broke through my thoughts. He bounded over with the kind of enthusiasm that would have seemed forced 6 months ago, but now felt genuine. Did you see the customer satisfaction scores from last month? We hit 94% positive ratings. That's higher than any other dealership in the region. I saw them. I smiled. Congratulations. You've all earned those numbers. Trevor beamed. He'd been promoted to senior sales associate after consistently demonstrating the kind of honest, straightforward approach Amanda was trying to cultivate across the entire team. Amanda's in her office if you're looking for her. She's been working. On the quarterly presentation for your board meeting next week. I found Amanda exactly where Trevor had said, surrounded by spreadsheets, charts, and what looked like architectural plans. Her desk was organized chaos, but it was purposeful chaos, the kind that came from someone who knew exactly what they were trying to accomplish. "Knock, knock," I said, tapping on her open door. Amanda looked up, and her face lit up with the kind of smile that made me remember why we'd been close as children, before careers and expectations and family drama had driven us apart. "Perfect timing," she said, gesturing to the papers spread across her desk. "I just finished the projections for year 2 of the restructuring plan. Want to see something amazing?" She turned her laptop screen toward me, and I had to read the numbers twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding them. "Profit margins are up 37%? 38% as of yesterday's sales," Amanda corrected. "Turns out that when you're not hemorrhaging money through corruption and employee turnover, when you're not paying legal fees for fraudulent practices, and when your customers actually trust you enough to refer their friends, running a car dealership can be quite profitable." I sank into the chair across from her desk, genuinely impressed. "These numbers are better than our most optimistic projections. They're sustainable too. We're not cutting corners or manipulating anything. These are real profits from real sales to customers who are genuinely satisfied with their experience." Amanda pulled up another screen. "Customer retention is at 86%, which means people are coming back for service, for their next car purchase, and they're telling other people about us. Word-of-mouth referrals are up 400% from this time last year." "What about employee satisfaction?" Amanda's grin widened. "Jake finished his financial management certification last month with a perfect score. Sarah got promoted to parts department supervisor, and she's implementing an inventory tracking system that's going to save us thousands. We hired 3 new salespeople, and all of them came from other dealerships specifically because they'd heard about our ethical business practices. And the lawsuit situation? Settled. All of them. Dennis pled guilty to embezzlement and got 18 months plus restitution. Patricia's trial is next month, but her lawyer is already talking about plea deals. Tony flipped on both of them in exchange for a lighter sentence, and his testimony pretty much sealed the case." Amanda's expression grew serious. "More importantly, every customer who was overcharged has been made whole, and we've implemented safeguards to ensure it never happens again." I leaned back in the chair, taking in everything she'd accomplished. "You know, when I first decided to acquire this place, I thought the best-case scenario would be breaking even within 2 years while maintaining employment for the honest workers. And instead, you've turned this into a flagship operation. These profit margins, this customer satisfaction, this employee culture, this is exactly the kind of success story our investors hope for when they back a restructuring project." Amanda's smile faded slightly. "Speaking of investors, what happens now? Do you sell the dealership to someone else, cash out your profits, and move on to the next acquisition?" It was a fair question, and one I'd been wrestling with for months. The original plan had been exactly what Amanda described: stabilize the business, demonstrate profitability, then sell to a local operator who could maintain the improvements we'd implemented. It was Summit Ventures' standard operating procedure, and it was what our board expected. "Actually," I said, "I have a proposition for you." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "What kind of proposition?" I pulled a document from my briefcase and placed it on her desk. "A partnership agreement. Summit Ventures retains a 40% stake in Premium Motors. You acquire 51% ownership through a combination of sweat equity and a very favorable loan structure. And we bring in a local businessman named Marcus Thompson as a 10% silent partner to provide additional working capital." Amanda stared at the document like it might disappear if she looked away. "You're offering to sell me the dealership?" "Offering to make you the majority owner of a business you've already proven you can run better than anyone else. The loan terms are structured so that your ownership percentage increases over time as you pay it down. In 5 years, if you want to buy out Summit Ventures entirely, We'll sell our remaining stake at a predetermined price. But why? This place is profitable now. You could sell to any number of buyers for a significant return on investment. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the showroom floor. Below us, I could see Jake explaining the features of a pickup truck to a young couple, Sarah organizing a parts delivery, Trevor shaking hands with a customer who was picking up his newly purchased sedan. The scene looked like something from a commercial for American business success, diverse, professional, authentic. 6 months ago, I called you nobody, I said without turning around. I dismissed you, judged you, wrote you off based on appearances and assumptions. I was wrong about you then, and I've been wrong about a lot of things since. Sophia, let me finish. I turned back to face her. I built Summit Ventures to be successful, to be profitable, to prove that I could turn failing businesses into thriving ones. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that the point of business isn't just to make money, it's to create something meaningful, something that makes people's lives better. Amanda was quiet, waiting for me to continue. What you've built here isn't just a profitable car dealership. It's a place where employees feel valued, where customers feel respected, where the community has a business they can trust. That's worth more than any financial return our investors might see from selling to the highest bidder. So you want to keep me as a partner because I make you feel good about capitalism? Amanda's tone was teasing, but there was a serious question underneath. I want to keep you as a partner because you're a better businesswoman than I gave you credit for, and because I think we can build something together that neither of us could create alone. I gestured toward the architectural plans on her desk. What are those? Amanda's eyes lit up. Plans for a second location. There's a failed Ford dealership in Boulder that's been sitting empty for 2 years. The building is solid, the location is perfect, and the price is reasonable. If we can replicate what we've done here, you want to expand? I want to prove that what we've accomplished here isn't a fluke. I want to show that ethical business practices and genuine customer service can be profitable across multiple locations, multiple markets. Amanda picked up one of the architectural drawings. But more than that, I want to create jobs for people like Jake, opportunities for people like Sarah, workplaces where employees don't have to choose between paying their bills and maintaining their integrity. I studied the plans she'd shown me. Detailed layouts for a showroom, service bays, office spaces. Someone had put serious thought into every aspect of the design. How long have you been working on this? 3 months. I didn't want to mention it until I was sure we could make the current location sustainable. But once the numbers started, looking solid, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities. And you think Boulder could support another luxury car dealership? I think Boulder could support an honest luxury car dealership. There's a difference. Amanda pulled up a market analysis on her computer. The nearest ethical competitor is 40 miles away. Customer satisfaction scores in the Boulder market are abysmal across all brands. There's definitely demand for what we're offering. I found myself nodding as I reviewed her research. The business case was solid, the market opportunity was real. And Amanda had clearly done her homework. But more importantly, she was thinking like an entrepreneur now, not just a manager following someone else's instructions. What would you need from Summit Ventures to make this happen? Initial capital for the Boulder location, operational support during the first year, and your permission to hire away some of the best people from other dealerships who are looking for a better work environment. Amanda paused. And I'd like you to be involved in the expansion, not as the owner making decisions from California, but as a true partner helping to build something we both believe in. The offer caught me off guard. You want me to move to Colorado? I want you to decide whether Summit Ventures is just a financial investment vehicle or whether it's a platform for creating the kind of businesses you wish existed in the world. Amanda stood up and came around her desk. You said you've been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe one of those things is the idea that success has to come at the expense of other people's well-being. She was right, and we both knew it. Somewhere, in the process of building Summit Ventures into a successful private equity firm, I'd lost sight of why I'd started the company in the first place. I'd wanted to prove that businesses could be both profitable and ethical, that success didn't require stepping on other people or cutting corners. But over time, the focus had shifted to purely financial metrics, and the mission had gotten lost in spreadsheets and board presentations. If I agreed to this partnership, if I moved my operations to Colorado and worked with you on expanding premium motors, what would that look like day to day? Amanda smiled. Honestly, it would look like a lot of hard work, long hours, and probably more family dinners than either of us has time for. But it would also mean building something that matters, creating jobs that people can be proud of, and proving that businesses can be successful without compromising their values. Family dinners? Yeah, well, turns out that when you're not feuding with your sister, having family around can actually be pretty nice. Plus, someone has to keep you grounded when the success starts going to your head. I laughed, realizing how much I'd missed Amanda's irreverent sense of humor. Is that your professional assessment, Dr. Chen? That's my sisterly assessment, Ms. Chen. The professional assessment is that you're a brilliant businesswoman who's been wasting her talents on purely financial engineering when you could be using them to create something transformative. I picked up the partnership agreement and read through it more carefully. The terms were generous to Amanda, but structured, in a way that protected Summit Ventures' interests while providing clear incentives for long-term success. It was exactly the kind of deal I would have recommended to any of our portfolio companies. There's one condition, I said finally. Amanda's face grew serious. What's that? No more calling people nobody, ever. Not customers, not employees, not family members who show up looking like they don't belong. Amanda's cheeks flushed red. God, I'm never going to live that down, am I? Probably not, but that's what makes it a good reminder. She extended her hand. Deal. I shook it. Deal. As we stood there in her office, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd accomplished, I realized that the woman who had dismissed me as nobody 6 months ago had become somebody I genuinely respected and wanted to work with. More than that, she'd become the sister I'd missed without realizing it. So, Amanda said, settling back into her chair, when do you want to start looking at the Boulder property? How about Monday? I can fly on Sunday night and we can drive up there first thing in the morning. Perfect. I'll set up meetings with the real estate agent, the city planning department, and a few potential employees who've expressed interest in joining our team. I gathered my papers and headed toward the door, then paused. Amanda? Yeah? Thank you for giving me a chance to be somebody better than the person who walked in here 6 months ago. Amanda smiled. Thank you for seeing that I was somebody worth investing in, even when I couldn't see it myself. As I walked back through the showroom toward the exit, I noticed Jake helping an elderly woman understand the safety features of a sedan she was considering. Sarah was training a new parts assistant with patience and enthusiasm. Trevor was showing a family of 5 how the third-row seating worked in a large SUV. Everywhere I looked, I saw people who were good at their jobs and proud of the work they were doing. It was exactly the kind of workplace I'd dreamed of creating when I'd first started Summit Ventures, but had somehow lost sight of in the pursuit of financial success. Now, thanks to Amanda's leadership and vision, we had built something that proved you didn't have to choose between profitability and integrity. The automatic doors slid open as I approached the exit, and I stepped out into the Colorado afternoon. The mountains were visible in the distance, snow-capped peaks rising against a brilliant blue sky. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, building exactly what I was supposed to build, with exactly the right person as my partner. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Forgot to mention, we're doing a company barbecue this Saturday to celebrate our 6-month success. You should stay for it. Mom and Dad would love to see you. I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." "And Amanda? Thanks for not calling me nobody anymore." Her response came immediately. "Thanks for proving you're somebody worth knowing." I drove away from Premium Motors. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it all. I'd come to Colorado thinking I was saving a failing business and maybe reconnecting with an estranged sister. Instead, I've discovered that sometimes the person who calls you nobody is the same person who can help you remember who you really want to be. 2 years later, I stood on the balcony of my new Denver office, looking out at the Rocky Mountains while reviewing the quarterly reports that had just arrived from our accounting firm. The numbers were almost surreal. Premium Motors had grown from a single struggling dealership to a network of 4 locations across Colorado and Wyoming, with plans for 2 more openings in the next fiscal year. Our employee satisfaction ratings consistently ranked in the top 5% nationally, and our customer retention rates had become case studies at business schools. But what made me proudest wasn't the financial success, it was the culture we'd built. Every location operated under the same principles Amanda had established at the original Premium Motors: radical transparency, ethical business practices, and genuine respect for both employees and customers. We'd proven that treating people well wasn't just morally right, it was incredibly profitable. My assistant knocked on the door, interrupting my thoughts. "Sophia? Amanda's here for your lunch meeting, and she brought someone with her." I turned to see Amanda walking into my office. But she wasn't alone. Behind her was a woman I didn't recognize, mid-30s, wearing a conservative business suit, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she was about to make an important presentation. "Sophia, I'd like you to meet Rebecca Martinez," Amanda said, barely containing her excitement. "She's the regional director for Hartley Financial Group, and she has a proposition that I think you're going to find very interesting." Rebecca stepped forward, extending her hand with a confident smile. "Ms. Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet with me on such short notice. I've been following Premium Motors' success story for months, and I have to say, what you and Amanda have accomplished is remarkable." "Thank you," I said, gesturing for them to sit in the conference area of my office. "Amanda mentioned you had a business proposition?" Rebecca opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Actually, it's more of a partnership opportunity. Hartley Financial has been looking for ethical, high-performing dealership operations to include in our new automotive investment fund. We're particularly interested in businesses that have demonstrated sustainable growth while maintaining exemplary employee and customer satisfaction ratings." I glanced at Amanda, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "What exactly are you proposing?" "We want to provide the capital for a major expansion of Premium Motors across the western United States. We're talking about 25 to 30 new locations over the next 5 years, with Premium Motors maintaining operational control and Hartley providing the financial backing." Rebecca slid a document across the table. "The initial investment would be $50 million, with additional tranches available based on performance milestones." I picked up the document, scanning the terms. The numbers were impressive, but I'd learned to be cautious about partnerships that seemed too good to be true. "What's the catch?" Rebecca laughed. "The catch is that we need you to prove that your model is scalable beyond Colorado. We've seen plenty of successful small business operations that couldn't maintain their culture and quality standards when they expanded rapidly. We need to know that Premium Motors can grow without losing what makes it special." "And how would we prove that?" Amanda leaned forward, unable to contain herself any longer. "By opening 10 locations in the next 18 months, instead of the 2 we had planned. Rebecca's team has identified markets in Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and New Mexico, where there's significant demand for ethical automotive sales. If we can successfully launch and operate 10 locations while maintaining our customer satisfaction and employee retention standards, Hartley will fund the full expansion." I set down the document, my mind racing through the implications. 10 locations in 18 months was an aggressive timeline, possibly too aggressive. But the opportunity was exactly what we'd been working toward, the chance to prove that ethical business practices could scale to a truly national level. What kind of support would Hartley provide beyond funding? Full operational consulting, market research, site selection assistance, and a dedicated team to help with hiring and training, Rebecca replied. We've done this with other retail operations, but never with a company that prioritizes culture and ethics the way Premium Motors does. Frankly, we think your approach could revolutionize the entire automotive industry. Or it could destroy everything we've built if we try to grow too fast, I pointed out. Amanda nodded seriously. That's exactly what I told Rebecca when she first approached me. But then she showed me something that changed my mind. She pulled out her phone and opened a video file. This is footage from a hidden camera investigation that a consumer advocacy group did at 3 different luxury dealerships in Phoenix last month. I watched as the video showed potential customers being lied to about financing terms, pressured into unnecessary add-ons, and treated with obvious disdain based on their appearance or perceived income level. It was everything we'd worked to eliminate from our own operations, and it was apparently still standard practice across much of the industry. The automotive sales industry has a reputation problem, Rebecca said. Customer trust is at an all-time low, and younger consumers especially are looking for alternatives to the traditional dealership experience. Premium Motors has proven that there's a better way to do business, and we think there's massive market demand for that approach. But can we maintain our standards while growing that quickly? I asked Amanda. I think we can, but only if we do it right. I've been working on a training and certification program that could ensure every new location operates according to our principles. Amanda pulled out another document. We'd require every manager to complete a 6-week intensive program at our Colorado locations before they're allowed to open their own dealership. Every salesperson would go through ethics training, and we'd implement mystery shopper programs to ensure compliance with our standards. I reviewed Amanda's training proposal, impressed by the level of detail she'd put into it. She'd thought through everything from hiring criteria to performance evaluation systems to customer feedback mechanisms. What about the financial risk? I asked Rebecca. If we open 10 locations and some of them fail, what happens to the expansion funding? That's where the performance milestones come in, Rebecca explained. You don't get access to the full $50 million up front. It's released in tranches based on achieving specific targets for customer satisfaction, employee retention, and financial performance. If you hit all your milestones, you get the full funding and we move forward with the larger expansion. If you don't, we reassess the partnership. It was a reasonable structure, one that protected both parties while providing strong incentives for success. But I still had concerns about the timeline. 18 months is very aggressive for 10 locations. What if we said 2 years? Amanda and Rebecca exchanged glances. Actually, Amanda said, there's a reason for the 18-month timeline. Rebecca's investment committee is only approving new partnerships through the end of next year. If we don't complete the pilot expansion by then, the larger funding opportunity disappears. So it's all or nothing. Not exactly, Rebecca clarified. If you decide the pilot expansion is too risky, Hartley would still be interested in providing funding for a slower growth strategy. But the revolutionary potential we're talking about, the chance to truly transform the automotive industry, that requires moving quickly enough to capture market share before other companies copy your model. I stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the mountains while I processed everything they'd presented. It was the opportunity we'd dreamed about, the chance to prove that ethical business practices could succeed on a national scale. But it was also a massive risk that could destroy everything we'd built if we miscalculated. Can I have some time to think about this? Of course, Rebecca said. But I should mention that we need a decision within 2 weeks. The investment committee meets monthly, and if we're going to move forward, we need to present the partnership at their next meeting. After Rebecca left, Amanda and I sat in my office, both lost in thought. The magnitude of the decision hung between us like a physical presence. "What's your gut telling you?" I asked finally. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "My gut says we can do this. We have the systems, we have the culture, and we have the team. But my head says 18 months is crazy ambitious. What if we compromise? What if we commit to opening 6 locations in 18 months instead of 10? Rebecca was pretty clear that the investment committee wants to see proof that we can scale rapidly. 6 locations might not be enough to demonstrate that. I pulled up our current financial projections on my computer. Even with the success we'd achieved, opening 10 locations would strain our resources and our management team to the breaking point. We'd need to hire and train at least 40 new employees, find and negotiate leases for 10 properties, establish relationships with local banks and financing partners in 4 different states. I trailed off, overwhelmed by the logistics. "I know it sounds impossible," Amanda said. "But think about what we've already accomplished. 2 years ago, Premium Motors was a failing dealership with corrupt management and terrible customer satisfaction. Now we're running 4 successful locations and considering a $50 million expansion deal." She was right. We'd already achieved things that had seemed impossible at the time. "What would you need to make this work?" I asked. Amanda's eyes lit up. "Complete authority to hire a dedicated expansion team. I'd like to bring in an operations manager, a training director, and a site selection specialist. And I'd want to promote Jake to regional training coordinator. He's been developing our employee education programs, and he's exactly the kind of person who should be teaching our culture to new hires." "Jake, from Parts and Accessories?" "Jake, from Parts and Accessories, who now has his MBA and has been instrumental in developing our operational procedures. He understands our values better than anyone because he lived through the transformation. Plus, he's one of the most naturally gifted teachers I've ever seen." I had to admit, promoting Jake made sense. He'd not only redeemed himself after the Dennis Rodriguez situation, he'd become one of our most valuable employees. "What about the financial projections? Do the numbers actually work?" Amanda pulled out her laptop and opened a spreadsheet that was clearly the result of weeks of careful analysis. "Based on our current profit margins and the market research Rebecca's team provided, each new location should be profitable within 8 months. The initial investment per location averages $4.2 million, including build-out, inventory, and working capital. If we hit our targets, total revenue across all locations would be approximately $250 million annually by year 3. I studied the projections, looking for potential problems or overly optimistic assumptions. But Amanda had been conservative in her estimates, and the numbers were based on real performance data from our existing locations. "You really think we can maintain our culture and standards while growing this fast?" "I think we have to try," Amanda said firmly. "Because if we don't, someone else is going to figure out how to scale ethical business practices, and they'll capture the market opportunity we've identified. This isn't just about Premium Motors anymore. It's about proving that businesses can be successful without exploiting their employees or deceiving their customers." I closed the laptop and looked at my sister, seeing the same determination that had driven her to turn around the original Premium Motors location. She wasn't just talking about expanding a car dealership. She was talking about starting a movement. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do it." Amanda's face broke into a huge grin. "Really?" "Really, but with conditions. We hire the expansion team. You described, we implement even more rigorous monitoring systems than Rebecca suggested, and if we start seeing any decline in culture or customer satisfaction at any location, we slow down immediately." "Agreed." Amanda stood up and started, pacing excitedly. "I already have 3 people in mind for the expansion team, and I've been working on a culture assessment tool that would let us monitor employee satisfaction in real time. And I want monthly board meetings instead of quarterly ones during the expansion phase. We need to be able to course correct quickly if things start going sideways." "Absolutely. Anything else?" I thought for a moment. Yeah. I want Dad to be our first official advisor. He spent 40 years in retail management, and he'll tell us the truth about whether we're making smart decisions or just getting caught up in our own success. Amanda's expression softened. He's going to be so proud when we tell him about this. Assuming we can pull it off. We can pull it off, Amanda said confidently. We've already proven that treating people well is good business. Now we just have to prove that good business can change an entire industry. As I watched Amanda gather her papers and prepare to leave, I realized that the woman who had once called me nobody had become the person I trusted most in the world to help me build something meaningful. More than that, she'd become the kind of leader who could inspire others to believe that business could be a force for positive change. Amanda, I called as she reached the door. Yeah? Thanks for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She smiled. Thanks for giving me the chance to become somebody worth following. After she left, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the mountains and thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 2 years ago, I walked into a failing car dealership expecting to find a quick turnaround opportunity. Instead, I'd found a sister, a mission, and a chance to prove that success didn't have to come at other people's expense. Now we were about to find out if that philosophy could change an entire industry. It was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly the kind of challenge that made all the long hours and difficult decisions worthwhile. I picked up my phone and called Rebecca Martinez. When she answered, I could hear the hope in her voice. Rebecca, it's Sophia Chen. We've made our decision about the expansion partnership. And you'd better start preparing that investment committee presentation. Premium Motors is going national. The silence on the other end of the line lasted just long enough for me to second-guess the decision. Then Rebecca's voice came through, filled with excitement. Sophia, I think you and Amanda are about to change everything. As I hung up the phone, I realized she might be right. We were about to find out just how much impact two sisters who'd once considered each other nobody could have when they decided to build something together. 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in an empty warehouse in Phoenix, Arizona, watching Amanda pace off distances while talking animatedly on her phone with our new operations manager, Carlos Rivera. The space was cavernous, 30,000 square feet of concrete floors and exposed steel beams that would soon be transformed into our 5th Premium Motors location. The customer lounge area goes here, Amanda said, marking an invisible boundary with her hands. And we'll put the service bays along the east wall to take advantage of the natural light. She looked at me with the kind of excitement usually reserved for children on Christmas morning. Can you see it? I tried to imagine luxury cars gleaming under professional lighting, comfortable seating areas where customers could relax while their vehicles were being serviced, and the open, welcoming atmosphere we'd created at our other locations. But all I could see was empty space and a daunting construction timeline. I see a lot of work ahead of us, I said honestly. Amanda laughed. That's what you said about the Boulder location, and that's our highest performing dealership. Now, she walked over to where the manager's office would be built. Phoenix is going to be different, though. The market dynamics here are more competitive, and we're dealing with customers who have been burned by unethical dealers for decades. It's going to take time to build trust. How much time? Our market research suggests 18 months to establish a solid reputation, but I think we can accelerate that with the right community outreach strategy. Amanda pulled out her tablet and showed me a presentation she'd been working on. I want to partner with local nonprofits, sponsor community events, and maybe even offer financial literacy workshops. Show people that we're not just another car dealership trying to make a quick profit. The presentation was impressive. Detailed plans for community engagement, employee recruitment strategies, and even architectural renderings of what the finished showroom would look like. Amanda had clearly been thinking about this expansion on multiple levels. What about staffing? Have you identified potential managers for all 10 locations? 8 out of 10, Amanda replied. I've been recruiting from other dealerships across the region, looking for people who share our values but haven't had the opportunity to implement them. Plus, I'm promoting 3 of our current employees to management positions at new locations, including Jake. Jake's going to run the training center we're establishing in Denver, but I'm also promoting Sarah to manage the Salt Lake City location, and Trevor is taking over operations in Albuquerque. Amanda's pride in her team was evident. These are people who lived through our transformation, who understand what we're trying to build. They're not just employees anymore. They're missionaries for a different way of doing business. I had to admit, the idea of our original team members spreading out to lead new locations was appealing. They would carry the culture we'd worked so hard to establish and ensure that each new dealership truly reflected our values. "What's the biggest risk you're worried about?" I asked. Amanda was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "Honestly, I'm worried about success." "Success?" "Yeah. I'm worried that if we grow too quickly, if we become too profitable, we'll start attracting the kind of employees and customers who don't care about our values. They just want to be associated with a winning organization. And slowly, without anyone really noticing, we'll become just another corporate success story that forgot why it started." It was a remarkably insightful concern, and one that I'd been thinking about myself. We'd seen it happen to other companies, rapid growth leading to cultural dilution, original values becoming marketing slogans rather than operating principles. So how do we prevent that? By staying connected to our roots, Amanda said firmly. By never forgetting what it felt like to work in a toxic environment, to be dismissed as nobody, to feel like your job was just a paycheck instead of a purpose. She gestured around the empty warehouse. "Every time we open a new location, I want the management team to spend a week at the original Premium Motors, working alongside the people who built this culture. I want them to hear Jake's story, to understand Sarah's journey, to see what transformation looks like at a personal level." "That's not scalable long-term," I pointed out. "Maybe not in the traditional sense, but if we're going to revolutionize an industry, we have to do some things differently. We have to prioritize culture over efficiency, purpose over profit margins." Amanda pulled up another document on her tablet. "Look at these employee satisfaction scores from companies that tried to scale rapidly without maintaining their culture. They all show the same pattern. Initial success followed by gradual decline as original employees leave and new hires never fully buy into the mission." I studied the data she'd compiled, recognizing several companies I'd worked with through Summit Ventures. The pattern was clear and concerning. "So what's your solution?" "Constant vigilance, monthly culture audits at every location, anonymous feedback systems that actually get reviewed and acted upon, and most importantly, the willingness to slow down or even close locations if they start drifting from our standards." "You'd really close a profitable location if it wasn't meeting cultural standards?" Amanda met my eyes directly. "I'd close every location if that's what it took to preserve what we've built. Because without our culture, without our commitment to treating people well, we're just another chain of car dealerships. And the world doesn't need more of those." Her conviction was absolute, and I realized that this was exactly the kind of principled leadership that would be necessary to maintain our standards during rapid expansion. My phone buzzed with a call from Carlos Rivera, our new operations manager. "Carlos, how's the site inspection going in Utah?" "Better than expected," Carlos's voice came through the speaker. "The Salt Lake location has great potential, high visibility, excellent access to major highways, and the previous tenant left behind some infrastructure we can use, but I wanted to update you on the staffing situation." "Go ahead." "We've had over 300 applications for 25 positions. Word has gotten out about our employee benefits and workplace culture, and people are driving from neighboring states to interview with us." Amanda and I exchanged glances. High-quality job applicants were always good news, but this level of interest was beyond what we'd anticipated. "That's encouraging," I said. Any concerns? Just one. About half the applicants are coming from our competitors, and some of them are bringing inside information about pricing strategies, customer lists, and operational procedures. We need to be careful that we don't accidentally engage in any unfair business practices. It was a smart observation. In our enthusiasm to hire the best people, we couldn't afford to expose ourselves to legal problems or ethical compromises. What's your recommendation? Amanda asked. Strict policies about proprietary information. Anyone who joins us from a competitor signs an agreement that they won't share confidential information from their previous employer, and we don't ask them to. We compete on our own merits, not on insider knowledge. Agreed, I said. Implement that policy across all locations immediately. After ending the call, Amanda and I continued walking through the Phoenix space, discussing layout options and timeline challenges. But my mind kept returning to Carlos's observation about the flood of job applications. It was flattering that so many people wanted to work for Premium Motors, but it also highlighted the responsibility we had to maintain the standards that made us attractive in the first place. Amanda, I said as we prepared to leave, are you sure we're ready for this level of scrutiny? If we succeed, every business decision we make is going to be analyzed, copied, and criticized. Are you prepared for that kind of pressure? Amanda stopped walking and turned to face me. 2.5 years ago, I was a mid-level sales manager at a corrupt dealership, dismissing potential customers based on their appearance and enabling unethical behavior because I was too focused on short-term sales numbers to see the bigger picture. She gestured around the empty warehouse. Now I'm designing training programs that could change how an entire industry treats its employees and customers. The pressure we're facing now is nothing compared to the pressure of knowing you've wasted years of your life building something that doesn't matter. And if we fail, if the expansion doesn't work, if we can't maintain our culture at scale, if the whole thing collapses, then we fail having tried to build something meaningful. But Sophia, look at what we've already accomplished. Look at the lives we've changed, the customers who trust us, the employees who come to work excited about what they're doing. Even if everything we're planning falls apart tomorrow, we've already proven that business can be done differently. As we drove back to the airport, I reflected on Amanda's words. She was right. We'd already succeeded in the ways that mattered most. The financial success, the expansion opportunities, the industry recognition were all validations of our approach, but they weren't the real measure of what we'd built. The real measure was in the thank you letters from customers who felt respected and valued. It was in the employee retention rates that defied industry norms. It was in the ripple effect as other businesses started adopting similar practices. It was in the transformation of two sisters who had once written each other off as nobody into partners building something that could outlast both of them. By the time our plane took off from Phoenix, I was no longer worried about whether we could handle the expansion. I was excited about the opportunity to prove that treating people well wasn't just good ethics, it was good business on any scale. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.